So I'll say good morning to everyone. And I'll call this meeting of TRPA's Advisory Planning Commission to order. Today's Wednesday, October 8th, 2025. It's 9:31. We're ready to rock and roll. Tracy is joining us online. Hi, Tracy. I'm going to go to you to do our roll call to determine our quorum, please.
Mr. Oling,
Present.
Ms. Carr,
Good morning.
Mr. Drake,
Good morning.
Mr. Drew,
Good morning.
Mr. Ferry,
Good morning.
Ms. Ferris. She did indicate she'd be joining. Perhaps she'll join shortly. Mr. Hill,
Good morning.
Ms. Jacobson,
Good morning.
Mr. McNamara,
Hello.
Ms. Barolas O'Neill,
Good morning.
Ms. Cyber, Ms. Starla,
Here.
Chief Stephen.
Chief Drennan in place of Chief Stephen.
Chief Drennan, thank you. Mr. Teixeira,
Present and accounted for.
thank you, Steve. Mr. Hitchcock
Here.
and Mr. Young.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Perfect. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you all for being here today. All right, I'm coming back to you, Tracy. If you could so eloquently convey the remote meeting rules of the day to us all, that would be great.
Okay, I'll try here. For members of the public joining us today to observe the meeting, visit trpa.gov. Under the calendar header, select Advisory Planning Commission meeting, hybrid meeting for today's date. There you'll find a link to the public webinar. To make comment, raise your hand by clicking the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen when the relevant agenda item comes up. If you've joined by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes. For informational items, public comment will be taken at the end of the meeting during general public comment. For action or possible action items, public comment will be taken before the Commission takes any action. To remote APC members, please raise your hand to speak, mute your microphone unless you're speaking, keep your camera on if you're able. Remote APC members may not use the chat box to make any comments or to have sidebar conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate it. I'll move us on to item 2, which is the approval of our agenda. Mr. Hester, any changes?
No changes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. I will deem the agenda approved as it was posted for the record and move us to item 3, which is a disposition of our minutes from our last meeting. I'll say thank you to our vice chair for chairing that meeting in my absence. Appreciate that. There was a draft set of minutes from August 13 on page 5 of our packets. Any commission members have any comments or questions on the minutes? I just saw one small thing. It says Chair Ferry deemed the agenda approved or something, and I wasn't here, but I'm sure that Chair Stoller did that. So just something really minor.
I'll move the minutes as amended, Mr. Chairman.
Perfect, Steve.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jennifer. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposition or abstentions?
I abstain.
Thank you, Mr. Drew, abstaining.
I abstain. This is Kate.
Thank you, Kate. Gotcha.
I also abstain. This is Kevin Drake.
Kevin Drake, abstaining. Perfect.
Mr. Chair, I'm abstaining. Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hill abstaining as well. Okay. Got it. I'll move us on then to our public hearings for the day. Our first item is agenda item 4A. This is on the Tahoe Environmental Observatory Network, or TEON briefing. Information on this item can be found on page 29 of your packets. And I think
I'll do a quick tee up and then
gonna go to Mr. Hester.
we have
A tee up.
tee up for TEON. We have a professor from UNR, Sudeep Chandra, online, and Dr. Pat Manley, who is an adjunct professor at UNR and also, I guess, technically a Forest Service employee, although on furlough. So she is here. Yeah, she's here because you all asked for them to be here. Specifically, Jennifer did, to come present on the TION. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm here in my capacity as representing UNR. And I'm just, we're happy to be here and have this opportunity to brief you all on this Tahoe Environmental Observatory Network. Dr. Chandra has been introduced. We have a team of folks that have been working on this. So he and I represent, I think, a really talented group of folks that have been working on this for the last couple of years. And our objective is to introduce you to this, take about half of our time to do that and leave hopefully lots of time for discussion and questions. And we really feel like this is an incredibly pertinent topic for the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. We really are working toward making it as useful and applicable and integrated into the TRPA's monitoring system and information needs as possible. So this will be a great opportunity for us to sort of understand a little bit more about how this group, what your interest is, and how we can best integrate the interests and needs of this group as you see it for TRPA, and then moving forward over the next couple of years to really make this an integral part of a system that supports the basin. Let me see if Sudeep wants to say anything. I believe he's on in terms of
Yeah.
introducing.
Yeah, I think we can just move to that next slide.
Great. And I'm not in control. There we go.
Great. Yeah, we're
So-
coming at this, establishing this environmental observatory network because we recognize as scientists, but we're also hearing from you, the managers and the community members, that Lake Tahoe seems like it's really facing an unprecedented amount of disturbances these days. You know, in this case, in the upper left corner, you can see the wildfire smoke from the Caldor fire and the burning of the watershed. In the left corner, you could see a handful of New Zealand mud snails that are a new invasive that's been introduced into the lake. Bottom left corner here, you can see the drought driven forests, right, that are changing there. Or in the middle, you could see some of our iconic sensitive species that we're trying to protect, like the whitebark pine. And then, of course, we have increased and enhanced visitation and changes in the nearshore. In some places, a perceived greening of water, and in other places not. And so framing this, we were thinking, you know, like, as a science community, what can we do to help understand all these types of environmental changes, but packaging it all into one system? Next slide, please. And within that framework of all of these challenges is this backdrop of extreme weather changes to the watershed to lake connections. Here's some work that the science community helped develop with the California Tahoe Conservancy and others, and the other managers in the room, where we know these big pushes and changes in the weather are going to change the amount and type of snowpack that we have, or it's already occurring. And as a result, can change, in this bottom left graph, the timing of runoff. For example, we typically would see peak timing of runoff in June, but we know we're moving back to May already. And by the end of this century, the prediction is to have peak runoff in January. Combined with that sort of watershed and runoff and climatic change comes a variety of different things that we need to plan for in the future, as aforementioned, whether it's wildfire and invasive species. And so thinking about these sort of grand challenges of our time and ensuring that we have a proper monitoring network leads us to, if you don't mind sharing the next slide, this idea of how can we develop some sort of tool that can help the efforts of our community through the environmental improvement program, and also assist in trying to understand where we are, whether it's a baseline understanding in present day of the ecological and environmental condition of the climate watershed stream to lake, or if it's also if there are deviations in that baseline or threshold that we might be changing as a result of the regional planning agency thresholds. We'd like to try to see if we can track our success by having a modern environmental network. And so we've really tried to design this idea of a network for two discrete things. How can we help with the environmental improvement program from the scientific side of things, but how can we also gauge our understanding of environmental change around different threshold topics, whether it's soil conservation, water quality, so on and so forth. Next slide. And so the idea of TION was basically to support the environmental improvement program and provide information for threshold assessments. And so we've established, as you'll see in a moment, we've established a framework for doing this and created a sensor network, but also visiting these kind of historical places within the basin to try to understand what the environmental changes within the basin. Next slide. And so this framework is based on about 20 years of investments and staff time. The recent investments that we've had include, have started since 2020 when the U.S. Forest Service supported our efforts to create a plan for TION and to pilot some approaches to demonstrate success. And then in 2021, our colleague at the University of Nevada had a small National Science Foundation grant to try to link changes in the watershed to the lake. And it put some sensors in the lake. 2023, we had additional support from SNPLMA through the Tahoe Science Council to showcase the benefits of TION networking and try to answer some critical questions from the land and watershed side that connects to the stream and the lake. And then recently, NOAA has supported the establishment of some equipment and sensors and staff time to implement a watershed to lake sensor network. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. But what I'd like to get across to you is that there's a historical amount of investment, but recently, because the science community has been quite active, we have quite a bit of different pieces of investment that we think are leading to the nice fruition of this TION, or Environmental Observatory Network. Next slide. Okay, so our fundamental goal in the Environmental Observatory Network is to produce information that can lead to solutions for managing the basin. And that basin includes the land, the meadows, sensitive ecosystems like the meadows, streams, and all the way down to the lake. And so our fundamental goal is to provide clear information on how disturbances like weather extremes, atmospheric rivers, wildfire, invasive species, high visitation and plastic introduction impacts the pulse of the basin and the lake. And then can we track that recovery if we implement programs or projects over time? The other main attribute is to create some sort of early warning system to guide management responses. So for example, maybe nearshore greening doesn't have to be a topic of the day. Maybe we're actually can utilize our equipment and sensors to predict when the edge of the lake may start greening. The key part is to support the EIP program and aid in the development and analysis of the TRPA thresholds that are used to evaluate the current state of the basin and lake. And then the fourth and final point is to ensure that, at least as scientists and implementing a program for monitoring, that we democratize this information so it's available to the public via a public platform, which can be viewed by the managers and the public to assist in near real-time decision-making and adaptation. So the goal is no longer to sort of wait for an annual, if you will, state of the lake or state of the basin, but actually just have that information available. So when we see big atmospheric rivers come through, we can see what types of changes we see in the landscape in near real time. I'll pass it back to you, Pat.
Great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we have set this up. Thank you, Sudeep, for that great laying the groundwork for what this is all about. So this is more the nuts and bolts, how we've approached it, what we've learned, the successes we've had, and what those sort of portend for TION going forward. So we established this set of sites, network sites across the basin. So it's kind of a two-parted approach. One is broad scale across the entire basin, gives you information on how things are changing over time. It's very akin to many of the current monitoring approaches in the basin, where we're just trying to get a pulse of what's happening across the basin over time. And then that's paired, though, with what we're calling a sentinel watershed approach, or an intensive monitoring approach, where we get more information about why things are changing. And that's the important connection between understanding the pattern and direction and magnitude of change over time, where those changes are occurring. And then the intensive gives us that really important information about why things are changing, and that informs management approaches in terms of investment, the degree investment is needed. So that combination, if the map on this slide basically shows you the suite of sites where we are currently and have historically, it's a subset of historical sites that we've established in order to kind of resurrect a system that actually was, I'll talk a little bit more about this in a few slides, but was established about 20 years ago. And so we've sort of resurrected some of these historical sites, resampled them, and as a sort of a proof of concept, and also to work out the methodologies, both the extensive and intensive, or the basin-wide and the sentinel watersheds. And within the sentinel watersheds, they're much more equipment as intensive, as you might imagine. So the broad scale is observational, and the sentinel watersheds are much more equipment focused, and that's where a lot of the hydrologic information is gathered, and really makes the most sense to sort of track how the hydrology of these watersheds is affecting not only what's in the watersheds, but also the lake. Anything you want to add to that, Sudeep? We're just tag teaming
Nope.
this whole thing.
Nope.
Okay, great.
Not at this time.
Next slide. So as I mentioned, about 20 years ago, we established a set of network sites. There were 105 sites or 100 sites across this basin, and they were all sampled for both vegetation and the wildlife. Also disturbances, so including wildfire, any kind of other fire management, recreational use. So across these 105 sites, we did a pulse of sampling, and it followed a national protocol that was established for broad scale monitoring such as this. And maybe the next slide, what we learned was was incredibly effective. It hadn't been done in the basin actually ever before. So this was the first investment at this scale, doing with an eye on just understanding what's the context and what's happening across the basin. So we detected, in terms of vegetation, 460 vascular plants. 80 of them had not actually been documented recently in the basin, 9 of which had never been documented in the basin, and many of those were of concern. They were invasive. And we had more late cereal forest than we expected at that time based on these infield measurements. So we learned a great deal about what we have, where it is, how it's doing, and what the historical data sets, and what this was compared to, were kind of bits and pieces of information in museums and in records and in books. So this was really the first time this had been done as a pulse to understand what's happening in the basin. Next slide. In terms of wildlife, we also had really great success with that. Almost 190 different species of wildlife. And in the focus being, we looked at which species were of concern or special status. We detected almost all of those, 55 out of 65. So pretty successful, and not just in terms of overall species and understanding what's happening with these communities, but also species that the people are particularly interested in understanding, either because they're of concern or because they're just really popular and important. And then we had 8 species again that hadn't even been documented in the basin. So next slide. So this was 20 years ago. And so what we did most recently, as Sudeep was pointing out, we started this sort of partial resample, thanks to those funding sources and support from various agencies. And this is the broad scale. Sudeep's going to talk about the Sentinel, or the more intensive sampling. So we resampled about 60 of those sites, 60 of the 105. And not all of the data we collected. We sampled birds, mammals, and vegetation. We did some aquatic amphibians as well. And so what did we learn from this? If you, next slide. We found that we detected a lot of species that were, we detected quite a few changes actually. So we originally, just going back a little bit with the data that I mentioned originally, that sort of first pulse, we developed measures. It was in the P7, if folks remember P7 for TRPA, and I was there as well. So we developed, using that set of data that I just provided an overview for, we developed a set of indicators of ecological integrity for consideration by TRPA. So we had bird indicators of integrity, mammal, herps, plants, and then a composite ecosystem measures of ecological integrity. And those were, I think, wildly successful. They were really exciting measures. And so next slide. When we went back to resample recently, I can tell you that I'm not going to present the sort of the comparison of those, but we can recalculate those measures of integrity. So we actually have the opportunity to develop or generate measures of ecological integrity and how they've changed over the last 20 years based on these two pieces of these pulse samples. We aren't finished with this one, so we need to complete it. But we could generate those measures of ecological integrity across those different taxonomic groups and also overall ecosystem integrity. We can look at where things are changing geographically across the basin, elevationally, and also, you know, around the different aspects, which species are shifting and why. What does that mean in terms of these systems, invasive species and species of concern? So it's already a powerful, you know, representation of what's happening in the basin. It just hasn't been completed. But what I'm showing you here is over this 20-year time frame, we are seeing a decline in bird species mixture. So this is just one look at how we might interpret these data. The green are the the green is the present, the blue is the historical, and we'll see that we've got a shift in reduction in bird species richness over this 20-year time frame. And on the right, it just shows you that's along an elevational gradient, and it just shows you that the decline is steeper at the lower elevations. So this is just a bit of information about how powerful a data set like this can be. And especially if we had sampled every year or every other year, every 3 years over that 20-year time frame. These are just two snapshots. So I think that what we're trying to both explore and demonstrate is the ability to both be successful in gathering this information with a pretty modest set of investments and number of sites. The second is that we can generate really powerful representations of how the system is changing and why. And that provide and put in the hands of managers and what and if, you know, anything might need to be done. Next slide. This is just a quick example of how we can use these kind of data to look at individual species. Right now, the threshold standards are focused on just a few species, although we know that the forests are of concern and species within the forest, trees are of concern, and also just overall forest health. So this is just focusing on how one might be able to sort of even evaluate individual species such as bald eagle or osprey, how and where are they changing and to what degree. Next slide. And this is just an example of how one can track, well, not only how are things changing, but where do we want things to be? So if there are threshold standards, which there are, and we update those with these robust representations of integrity, we can use systems like this on a 5-year basis, a 10-year basis, a 20-year basis, and you can look at how things are shifting and to what degree are things moving in a positive direction, not moving at all, or potentially moving in a negative direction. So this is an example of that index I was telling you about. Yeah, we can move on. We'll come back to some of the implications of this, but I'm going to turn it over to Sudeep to talk about the intensive Sentinel watershed work.
Yeah, and so just to kind of recap this part, I mean, the idea is with the regional planning agency thresholds, this resampling that Dr. Manley just mentioned allows us then within this network to either help guide the current thresholds on biological diversity or perhaps modify them so they're more representative of present day and we can track those changes over time. It's really powerful sort of tool now that hasn't been done up until this point in the basin. So I really applaud their team's efforts for this effort here. What I'm going to switch to now is something a little pseudo fancy, I guess. We've been basically trying to go to these focal watersheds that we know the climate on the west shore and the east shore and the south and the north are going to be a little bit different. And so what we've done is we've established sensors in a gradient from the high elevation parts of the forest in the streams all the way down into the lowland part of the streams and then to the near shore part of the lake. And these sensors can now measure parameters of soil health and function, for example, water quality within streams, the water quality of the near shore and offshore of the lake. And the idea is to have these sensors in the system so they can track disturbances in near real time. So we have this information beamed back up to cell towers and then placed at the university and on servers. And then we have this information stored on servers and then creating a visual data visualization platform for people to see when there's an atmospheric river coming through, for example. That's the concept. So next slide. I'm going to present two of these sort of concepts. This is on the right, you'll see photos of our team installing what looks like very simple instrumentation, but turns out to be kind of a pain working in these mountainous conditions, but they're working. Powered systems that are tracking, for example, local weather in Glenbrook versus at elevation versus Blackwood. And then off of these sensors, off of these instruments, we attach soil sensors to get soil temperature, for example. Soil temperature can be a really important proxy for us for understanding how much water may be moving through the system or potentially affecting tree health, for example. So some of our sensors are also on trees to measure tree girth and growth over the season. Here's an example of just two of the sensors. We picked the Glenbrook versus Blackwood sites, so east shore and west shore, to show you what happens with the extremes. Air temperature can be the same in these locations, but the soil temperature reacts in very different ways in the Glenbrook watershed at the same elevation versus Blackwood. And so these are fundamental properties of the watershed and the soils that we see and the amount of moisture that we might see there. So this is one way that we can start understanding the climatic stresses that happen within each system and what's the background versus maybe what's the major change from a drought, for example. Next slide. Here's another example. This is the lake network. So we have sensors within streams and the land in that previous slide, but now here's part of a lake network. So around the lake, you'll see this map. And in this map, you'll see, about 10, 12 dots or so. These are where we've now placed sensors within the lake to get at the near shore condition. And those of you who've been following the news, you'll know that there's some new invasive species in the lake, like New Zealand mud snails. And so we've been trying to track what type of oxygen changes might result as a result of having invasions. Another idea was to try to understand how do these big wind events and upwellings within the lake contribute to water quality change and production in the nearshore. So on the right, you'll see a graph. And in this graph, you'll see a box of red highlights. You can basically see when there's upwelling within the lake or big wind changes affecting the actual oxygenation of the nearshore, which should be a representation of either some physical process or potentially some algae growth within the lake. Towards the right of the graph, you're going to see a more stable period. And so what we want to do now across the sensor network is compare and contrast these locations, get some baseline information. And as we have additional disturbances to the system, we can see how they deviate from a base condition. Next slide. I don't know if this video will play. If maybe tap the slide, it may or may not play. But while it's playing, I hope it does. Can you tap it once again? There was a play button on the bottom of the slide. Great. This is an example of the website that we're creating plus data platform on the back end. And, it's kind of a very welcoming, meet the team, sort of promote some science, but promote the monitoring network, short videos that describe how and what we're doing to collect things and why we're doing it. And then what we want to do is try to share with people that, monitoring takes energy and effort. We want the win-win to happen, and we want the agencies that support this to be represented here. And then the network will actually, as you'll see coming up, we'll have the sensors available so people can toggle them on and off. So apologies for the dots in the center here, but the idea is fundamentally you might have soil moisture or precipitation or temperature of the water. And the public can basically go on and toggle on and off the sensors and look at that historical record and the present day condition. So this is perhaps the most important part for me, is to democratize this information. In my other projects around the globe, the more we are able to share with people the information in near real time, the less, the more opportunity is to create a new citizenry to help conserve Lake Tahoe. And that's what we're going to try to do here. Next slide. Pass it back to you, Dr. Manley.
Thank you. So this is our last slide, and then hopefully we'll have some time for discussion. But just to sort of touch on our key points that we wanted to make sure to share is that, first of all, this integrated monitoring system. That's our objective, is to provide something that is as scientifically rigorous, as effective in informing not only the condition of the basin, but how are there risks associated with those conditions? Are they improving or declining? And what sort of management investments in terms of an adaptive management approach would be most effective? And also timely. There's many of the things that we've been talking about here outside of the basin and other venues. Both Dr. Chandra and I have been working in many other locations, and being able to detect these changes on even a shorter time frame, like 5-year time frames, are actually very doable. And in another, happy to share other results from other work across the Western US and other places. But we can detect and look at how management effectiveness. So what's the contribution that management is making? Also, in the economic returns associated with these, investments. So there's a lot we could bring to a system like this that we aren't even talking about here, that I think has great value for TRPA and for the agencies investing in the environmental quality of Lake Tahoe. So we've had this opportunity to demonstrate its implementation over the last couple of years, but we haven't done a full implementation. I think that it would be, as we have like this unique and really valuable opportunity to show how a system like this can populate old threshold standards, new threshold standards, any threshold standards. That's the power of a system like this. So you're not targeting, a subset of measures. And then when you change those measures, you have to change your whole system. And then having that temporal sort of continuity gets lost. Well, where were we 10 years ago? Oh, we changed our threshold standards. We can't tell you what happened on. So this really gives you that flexibility to be able to shift what you're focused on. The early detection is a big part of that, but also shift how you might want to look at things over time and sort of keep pace with both our scientific understanding and the concerns and opportunities that there are here in the basin. We have the opportunity to provide these measures over the last 20 years, so we can do the current standards and any new standards using these data, and sort of say, like, kind of pilot test them in a sense, like how do they work? How well do they work? And actually adjust them to as needed. I think the next thing is just really understanding, well, what is happening? So what has happened over the last 20 years, and what might that mean for investments, regulatory requirements, new threshold standards, et cetera. And then, as Sudeep said, to make these publicly available, to not just available, but to have folks be engaged. There's, we have a few investments. Our funding has been pretty modest. But I think, TRPA has public engagement, the university has had public engagement, and many other agencies as well. But really to have people like understand what's happening in their watersheds around the basin, how are they a part of it? How can they be a part of it? So I think I'll stop there. I think that's our last slide. And see if there's any comments, questions. And thank you so much for your attention.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Dr. Chandra, Dr. Manley. Pretty fascinating stuff. Really useful, I think, going forward too, to the basin. So I'm excited about this. Let's go to APC members who have questions or comments for either presenter for us, Mr. Drew.
Great presentation, thank you. Is there a place where we can see the parameters and what will be measured and monitored?
Yeah, CDP is shaking his head, yes. We have a few formats at the moment. We have a major report that we generated.
Mhm.
So that's available. It has an executive summary. It has a lot of detail. The whole thing is, I don't know, like 190 pages, but it's in parts and pieces. So it's pretty easy to find maybe what you're interested in. So we do have that report. And then we have the story map that he pointed out that does exist is a bit more kind of high level. And then there's actually the data format and structure. I know a little less about that. I don't know if you want to chime in on that.
Yeah, and so on that last part, we are working towards developing the website and database. We're kind of in process. It's been 2 months. We anticipate another 2.5 months, kind of unveiling at the end of January. But all of that information that you're thinking about of what type of data sets are collected are in the report. And then at the high level, as pointed out in the story map. So we could share those with you. The link to the story map is in those QR codes on the presentation and perhaps a flyer that we may have sent to you. Staff may have sent to you ahead of time.
Okay, great. Yeah, because that was going to be my next question is the availability of downloading the data sets. Because in the past, that's sometimes been the challenge is, the data's there, but you need to download it from multiple different sites. Converting it to be able to do the comparison has been challenging, especially on the water quality side. So I'm hopeful that maybe is becoming clearer for you.
That's exactly right. So our hope is whatever happens with this instrumentation and, our colleagues at USGS are partner in this, and we're inviting others to also partner, is that you got to come to the table. The data's got to be able to be downloaded and we want to visualize it. Like you don't want to just have someone just, get temperature data. We want to make it accessible. And so I think of it as I want my parents who have no idea what I'm really doing still in my life to be able to at least download the data and look at the temperature at Lake Tahoe. And that's our effort. That's what we're shooting for by the first quarter of 2026.
Great. Well, that would be super helpful. I think that was, you mentioned P7 earlier. I mean, that was what we were struggling with 20 years ago is how do we take that data and make it meaningful to make management decisions? And that sounds easy. The actual implementation of it is much more difficult, and hopefully we're closer to that now. So thank you.
Yeah, that's critically important. Thanks, Drew. Garth? Garth, and then we'll go to you, Mr. Young, after.
Thank you so much for the presentation. This is great work that you guys are doing. The question that I have for you is, once your website is live, are all the MSIM sites that were visited, is all that data going to be available as well on the site, or is it just the real-time data from the other sites that are going to
The
be?
historical data, we've been working with TRPA, and so it's integrated into LT Info.
Okay.
So it's available there. We have an idea, we don't have funding, but we have an idea of how to make it even more accessible through essentially kind of a gridded map base approach. So an atlas, a lot of folks are familiar with the concept of an atlas, but sort of scaling it up a little bit in terms of from a 30-meter pixel to kilometer or half a kilometer scale. And then actually having an interpretation of what's happening in those cells. And then you can scale that up to a watershed, what's happening with that watershed. So I think that we can take what might, for most folks, be just too much information. It's great for the science side. It's great for the management side, a little less great for the public side. So we're toying some ideas and ginning them up to say, like, well, how can we scale this information so that it's useful for a variety of folks so they can engage with it in a way that's meaningful for them, which means you need to have a couple of different products.
Right. So not only the historical data that's already available in LT Info, but for the last 3 years of surveys that you've done, that'll be available as well.
Right.
Great. And then my next question is, what frequency are you planning on continuing surveying those MSIM sites in the future? I'm sure it's dependent on funding.
It is dependent upon funding. So in that report that we referenced, one of the things, in addition to sort of giving a dry run to this, is to come up with a set of recommendations. So we put as many recommendations as there as we've in that report as we felt comfortable, based on the data and experiences that we were having. So it kind of does depend on the funding and sort of a conversation. I think in there we talk about, let's have a conversation and who's engaged. Groups like this would be, super helpful and important to say, who should be engaged in how sensitive of a measure does it need to be? How big of a change is important? Over what period of time is important? Is it a 5-year time frame? That's going to cost less than every single year. So those are the kinds of things you can use to scale the effort and therefore the ability to answer questions about the system over time, if that makes sense. And the scope of what you're measuring as well. So more measurements obviously cost more money,
Right.
More frequently cost more money. So, and I think, we want to start at a modest level of investment, both to make sure that all of these the good things that we're already seeing even continue to play out even more with the additional investment. But then understand where does that sort of return on investment start to kind of plateau and maybe say we're good. This is great.
So potentially make every 10 years or 5 years, you have a sort of a.
Based on, again, from the TRPA reference or frame of reference, I would say every 5 years or every 4 years, depending on that's really going to give you a lot of specificity in terms of change, direction, location, why and how things are changing.
Right.
If one samples every single year, but you rack up the sample over a 4-year time frame, that's very powerful because you still get a little bit of an annual shift over there, and you start to see things change over the course of time.
Yeah.
So that's one of the recommendations in here. So there are a couple of different ways to slice the design in a way that makes it powerful and actionable and meet the needs of various agencies in their planning process.
Yeah, and my apologies, I didn't fully read the report that was attached here, so some of that information may have already been in there. One other question that I have for you, the 60 sites that were revisited and to compare to the historical, I think there was 102. Are the remaining 40 plus, are those just dropped from the future, or are you going to maybe go back and sample some of those additional 40 sites that weren't included from the original 102?
I think it'd be incredibly valuable to sample them.
Yeah.
We're prepared to do that. We're putting together proposals and such. We don't have the funding to do so, but I think that really that's a pretty robust sample size, but dropping it much below that makes it more scientific and but less useful for management, I would say. So we can say something about what's happening on those 60, but I think it's much better system in terms of supporting management and understanding what's happening around the basin to bump that up to at least that minimum 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much. I think this is really, really important information for not only the managers, as you're aware, to have, but for the public as well. So kudos to you guys for allowing the public to view and comment and everything else. So thank you.
Thanks, Garth. Mr. Young, we'll go to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for this presentation. Very exciting. The scientific opportunities just seem unlimited. Just the idea that we're still talking about what can we do with it, what might be done is just so exciting because what a fun time to be involved in this effort right at the beginning here. So best of luck to you. My question has to do with the democratization concept and idea, which I very much appreciate. I very much appreciate the transparency of data to the public. Yeah, it's just it's a wonderful concept and something that I think we would all support moving forward on. My question has to do with how you manage the inevitable individual interpretation of the data. Whenever Washoe County wants to move forward with a data effort and we're excited about it, we feel like we've, at a staff level, we're providing the public with information. One of the inevitable things that happens to us is the public appreciates that we're providing them with that data, but they will interpret that data in all different ways. from all different perspectives. And we've learned that some sort of guidance, some sort of interpretation, some sort of a narrative discussion of how to view the data, how to look at it, what it means. Just nothing too patronizing or insulting to the public, but some form of guidance is extremely helpful for everybody. I kind of see this effort almost like inviting people into a museum about Lake Tahoe and to walk around and look at information presented to them from room to room. You would want that information to have some sort of a little interpretation with it, something that goes along with it to help people who are looking at that data kind of know what to do with it and know how we may be thinking of it and know how agencies use that data. When somebody from just a citizen from Washoe County, which I know they will do, accesses this site with great glee and excitement, we will want them to have some understanding of how different agencies are going to use that data, what it means to the Forest Service, what it means to TRPA, how they can think of that, how they can leave that experience without having to just interpret it all on their own, which can unfortunately be bad for all of us. So I'm just super interested in, I know you've thought about this. I know that you've put some effort into this thought. It's not just my thought, but I'm really interested in how you manage that democratization of the data, and if there's anything Washoe County could learn from you as we also intend to be much more transparent with our data and information. So thank you very much for the discussion, and I'll look forward to your response. Thank you.
Great. I might take that just for a moment. Thanks, Mr. Young. So I think there are at least 3 different layers we've been considering. One of them is, for example, with soil temperature, is ensuring that on the website there's a brief paragraph that describes why it's important and what variation can mean for the growth of a tree, for example, or variation might mean for runoff of nutrients and soil process. Very basic, sort of like, I'm going to tell my parents at Thanksgiving what this soil temperature could mean. That's one, and have some thresholds around there. Number 2 is this information could feed into, for example, what the Tahoe Science Advisory Council has done this last year is a State of the Basin report. It could feed into an annual reporting that then allows us, yes, it's democratized data, but really at least once a year, there's a report card or a reporting of what that the blips meant in the data and why we interpret it that way. The third area that we've thought about, but it's not funded because we're sort of in the building phase, is creating some sort of, and I would like to do this, particularly through Science Advisory Council, a science manager team that responds to questions and queries in the website in near real time, kind of a natural, they call, an iNaturalist view of things, but not in this case that it's just the public responding to a question. It's like, there is a council member that's a scientist, and there's one that's a manager, and they can now answer these questions as they get submitted. I don't see us getting overwhelmed at the staff level by questions. I don't see it in other projects, for example. You might get 50 or 100 questions a year, and that's not a lot. It's like an email response, and we can just draft like, hey, here's what we see on this day. One thing that I hope it does is generate a conversation around snowpack change, for example. The fact that we are going to see runoff shift to January by the end of this century is something we need to be talking about in the Tahoe Basin. And so I think we could also use this as an opportunity for engagement for actually having a conversation between a staff person, scientist, and the public. Not a caustic conversation. I'm just thinking more of an educational moment. And I mean, that's my role as a professor. And so that's sort of that third layer I think is very important as we develop this platform out. I hope that was help to give you a flavor of the different ways we could try to ensure that there's bounds of understanding to what the data might be showing people.
Very helpful, exciting ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Kate, I see your hand just went up. Why don't we go to you?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Chandra. This was really a fascinating presentation. One of the things I wanted to touch on is I like the discussion regarding, you know, how for this information to be user friendly, especially for parents and so on and so forth. But I would love to see the accessibility to our young people. I mean, those are the people on our beaches that leave their garbage and maybe don't understand the impact they can have on Lake Tahoe, or getting, you know, even their kayaks and boats. Are you getting into the lake and ensuring that your boat is clean? And, you know, having the young people are so attracted to a QR code. If we had a QR code on all of our beaches and our public, you know, they're gonna think it's something, a freebie of something, or who knows, but they'll scan it with their phone. And even if you capture 10 out of 100 young people, I think it could go a long way. So I think capturing our young people, especially at our beaches and public places, and having that QR code on a sign with data and information, I just think it could go a long way. But thank you again. That was great.
Thank you. Excellent comment. I really appreciate that. I never thought about QR codes on beaches, but I'd be happy to work with the Forest Service to let's get those codes up. Let's get this information out there.
I'll
Yeah.
just,
Even old people can click a QR code, John's saying, yeah.
and I'll just chime in really quickly, but we have talked a bit about like along the bike trails and which are, you know, convey a lot of folks around the basin that, you know, understanding even just like you're in this watershed, and then that QR code helps you understand like what's the history of that watershed, brings you really in touch with the scientific information historically and currently. And so, yeah, I think it's just a great comment. I just wanted to mention, I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, just to add on, every boat ramp would be a great place too.
Oh, yep. Thanks, Kate. Jennifer, on to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Manley and Dr. Chandra. I'm glad I ran into you at the summit, and thank you, John, for making time on our agenda. So this was, it was very informative, and I'd echo the excitement behind it. I'm wondering about other entities that collect data and whether or not there's opportunity to incorporate it. Particularly coming to mind is our Nevada Division of Natural Heritage that does species surveys, right? And I know that one of our employees recently invented a special camera trap because she was interested on the distribution of one particular little rodent. I'm not a biologist, so I don't remember what she was looking for, but she's really excited about finding this in places that they hadn't documented it in recent years. And so there are other, you know, entities that are generating data that seems like it might complement or help fill data gaps. So do you envision like a call for data or other things that could bring other entities' information in?
Yeah, great comment and question. The short answer is yes. A lot of the effort that's put out now are for species of special concern on the biological side of things, whether it's a plant or an animal directed at an individual species because there's concern and we want to understand where it is and how it's doing. And those usually require kind of a specialized methodology for detecting them. this, I think that it's highly complementary in the sense that sort of the broad scale will detect them, but not maybe enough of the population to answer the specific question of concern. But it basically fills in a lot of great information about what else is happening, why there might be changes, that, you know, why the trends that are being observed might be occurring. So I think in terms of a sort of a data management side of things, absolutely. And what's great about, I don't know, data and these days right now is, you know, we've got iNaturalist, so that it's easy for people to collect data. There's a huge opportunity for public engagement and, you know, they call it citizen science, but it's science for citizens. I really like sort of switching that around a little bit. And then, and because there are those portals, everyone can use those portals to upload data, to make it available, to integrate into these broader scale, sort of systematically gathered information. So we can use what we call sort of positive citing, ad hoc citing information, and integrate that into our understanding of how things are changing over time. And certainly for agencies, it would be really valuable. And I would think there'd be a lot of incentive to make it simple to incorporate those data into a, you know, a larger data set, to where it's, if you want to look across multiple data sets, you absolutely can. And this is where I sort of like this scaling up a little bit, so that you have these units and then the data just piles in those units, and you can make inferences about not only what's happening, like did we observe a species here, or what's the probability of occurring here based on habitat conditions, but what else is happening, what's happening with the trees or the water, or the hydrology or the invasives. So you really sort of get a better picture of what's happening across these different taxa and these different systems in, you know, place to place. That gives you a lot of power to understand why things are changing. And then what you might be able to do about it.
I was at the annual litter summit that was put on by the Clean Up the Lake folks last week, which was another exciting event. They're branching into some aquatic invasive species monitoring, and they were excited about wanting to be like a hub or a portal for science in the basin. And I was like, time out, wait, no, I've been asking for that with TSAT for like 10 years. So, I mean, it looks like this is a little bit of that, where more information is coming into one place. And so I think that's exciting. And I'm also interested, shifting a little bit to the thresholds. You know, we've talked for years about, you know, how the thresholds are webbed together, and, you know, how one particular threshold might be informed by or have an impact on another, and what those conceptual models are, how the interwebbing of these different environmental, you know, measures impact each other. So I'm very interested in where your work might lead in that regard, of a better understanding of how the various thresholds interact, and what one might mean for another, and not just in a vacuum.
I imagine Dr. Chandra has something to say about this too. I'll just really quickly mention that is the power of a system like this. Not only the extensive with the intensive watersheds, so you have that co-located, both broad information and really specific for the things that are incredibly important here in the basin. But also you can see how things are changing relative to one another over time and space. So now we have a lot of good monitoring systems, but they're sort of individually topics. They're sort of siloed into the reasons they're being monitored, and so you can't really compare those data to one another. So you can understand what's happening with one thing, but not how it relates to another. So having this co-located data collection is really important and valuable. And I think that, you know, that's where we can integrate, I think, some of the efforts that are happening now, and potentially this could replace some of those efforts. But one of the things the last thing I'll just say that is a little bit different, again, because we have remotely sensed data. We have a lot of different sort of tools and techniques at our disposal these days. We basically model. So you take this empirical data, like I sampled it here, I sampled it in 100 places, but there are 100,000 of those places in the basin. What's happening with the other 90,000 places, right? that's where we basically use statistical models to model, to say, make inferences about what's happening in every single one of those places. And that's where you start to get to understand like how things are changing relative to one another. But we use statistical approaches and model, and you have wall-to-wall data every year, ideally, and how they're changing relative to one another. That gives you an incredible power to detect change and understand how these systems are shifting over time. So, Dr. Chandra, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, nothing else major to add. I support the comments that were just made by both of you. I just want to point out that we do have a Lake Tahoe Science Advisory Council, and within that council, we have a guiding document the scientists have worked on for now half a decade, but tries to link function from climate to land, land to stream, stream to lake, and integrate it. And so there is a whole backdrop of a half a decade of effort from which this network builds off of to try to get at functionality and process and change that could be important for informing those thresholds. Those thresholds are just kind of, I think of them as, little packets of information of how we evaluate how well we're doing in the basin. But really, I think, Jennifer, what you just pointed out is how we can link some of these thresholds will be really important in the future. And I think this mechanism of data collection and delivery and the type of information we're collecting will get us there. What will be key here is that we stick to a good, strong conceptual roadmap, and we don't deviate too much because there's just limited resources, as we all know. So that's kind of my plug for being pragmatic and how we approach these things as well.
Yeah, I certainly can appreciate scope creep and how detrimental it can be at times. So I appreciate that observation. The last thought I had actually keys off of this QR code discussion. Dr. Chandra, maybe you could leverage the UNR School of Journalism to get some folks over in that department excited about, public messaging and folks that maybe are interested in becoming like a public information officer. They can help to share that data. So thankfully UNR is huge, and maybe we could find some other resources to help tell the story.
That is exactly right. The QR code that's been given to you today was actually created, the story map was created by our journalism students this summer from the Hitchcock Program for Visualizing Science. And our goal is, in this future proposals that we're writing on the website, is to incorporate two different types of people. One's a computer scientist. We need those guys to kind of base the database and visualization side. But the Hitchcock program, we'd like to fund the students there to help make sure this is easy to use, right? We want it to be as easy to use as your iPhone. So that's the goal.
Yeah, good idea. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Steve Bashir. So it's refreshing to participate in a presentation and discussion where science is celebrated, because right now science is being undermined in many, many places. So kudos to the scientists for the work you're doing. I wanted to just drill down a little bit more, the QR code and the beach stuff that Kate mentioned. So it says here in the staff report, human activity on biodiversity, understand the effects. So what in this sensor network really helps us figure out what the human activity is that's impacting the environment?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. We place sensors at the request of conversation we had with the regional planning agency staff with limited funding. We said, okay, well, we'll put these sensors out in places where there are New Zealand mud snails and places where there are not New Zealand mud snails. And in this case, let us see whether we can see changes in temperature, oxygen, and conduction, which we would expect if the mud snails are controlling the type of algae that are growing. And so that would be an example of how the monitoring network can detect a baseline, and then you have an invasion, and then maybe things should change, or maybe do a comparison contrast in an invaded site versus a non-invaded site. Another area where I think the network can play a role here is if we end up managing forests in a slightly different way, or there's a wildfire that comes through, then we can see what type of soil temperature, tree growth change there is, runoff, And then that'll be captured in that stream network, a before and after design of trying to understand what that impact is, the pulse, right? And does your pulse come back to normal, or is it forever changed from the baseline? So that's another kind of area. The other part we've been exploring is having these sensors out. And then, for example, 4th of July, beaches are really crowded. People are talking about a lot of changes happening. But maybe the sensors we have today as installed don't pick up that change because they're measuring temperature and oxygen. But maybe the future sensors we'd like to have for DNA can measure DNA and E. coli in a rapid way. So we can see whether there's changes in E. coli in short periods of time. So these networks of sensors can be varied. For now, we've taken the more pragmatic demonstration side with sensors that are packaged and easy to produce and install. Easier, I would say. Nothing's easy at Tahoe, turns out. But there's a variety of different sensors you can lay onto here to then start understanding some environmental change with visitation. I hope
I
that answers.
appreciate that. Yeah, that's helpful. I appreciate the specific examples, and I just want to add more to the, what my colleagues have said about the fact that educating people on the specific impacts they're having in various locations would really be good. The QR code thing and public information, because people individually don't see an impact that they're making as individuals. They could see a picture with a lot of people and say, yeah, there's got to be an impact there. But, getting it down to individual behavior and helping to educate people's individual understanding would seem to be another opportunity for this network. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Any other thoughts from my colleagues? Hester?
Mr. Chairman, John Hester, for the record, not an APC member, but from staff's perspective, want to thank the presenters and also let the APC know our governing board has asked on a number of occasions that we more specifically mention the thresholds and how we're doing on the thresholds in staff reports and in the regional plan document, that has thresholds in the plan and even code in it. So this and those linkages, I think, are just going to make this more and more democratized, as Dr. Chandra says.
Yeah, that's a good point. I just had one request, is that the link on our agenda packet, or excuse me, on the website doesn't have the full slide deck for this presentation. So I don't know if we can get that uploaded on there. It just has your flyer, which is a great flyer, but I think your slide deck was awesome. So that should be linked so that we can continue to share this collectively. So why don't we move to public comment on this item? Let's see if any members of the public want to talk to you. I hope they do. So let's move us there. Again, to participate in the meeting, go to trpa.gov. In the calendar, click on APC meeting October 8th, 2025. There you'll find a link to our webinar. So if any member of the public wishes to comment, please come to the podium in the room or use the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or click *9 on your phone and we will call on you and unmute you. But for now, we will go into the room. I do see we have a public comment here, so go ahead and turn on your microphone. There you go. You got it. Good morning.
Good morning. Steve Dolan. Excuse me. Dr. Manley, thank you for this presentation. And it's good to learn that we share an interest in Third Creek watershed. Dr. Chandra, same to you, and good to see you again. I'm still dreaming about making it to Lake Atitlan, to your study center there. A few points for my question. Tahoe Environmental Research Center gave the State of the Union or State of the Lake presentation on July 17th, where they stated that an unknown reason for an increase in Lake Tahoe's phosphorus levels is occurring. Dr. Hampton, the director of TURC, suggested that they may study the potential raised by this question I'm about to ask. Over recent years, USGS studies show that there is a steadily increasing salinity in Lake Tahoe streams. That increased salinity has also reached bedrock. Thus, it has reached nearshore environments. knowing that the North Shore's sediment is iron rich and that the phosphorus is bound to that complex iron sediment, and knowing that phosphorus through exposure to salt is released from the iron in the sediment and causes internal phosphorus loading, eutrophication, as it's known. For me, it's a nutrient-rich environment for algae. Director Reagan has told me that several places around the lake, several communities around the lake have eliminated the use of the salt-rich brine used for the streets, which is contributing to the streams and the bedrock salinity, which is moving into the sediment, which is releasing the phosphorus. I'm curious if you guys have studied this release of phosphorus via this road salt, basically, or if you intend to add that to possibly your curriculum for your studies. I really appreciate that you're here and presenting this to TRPA. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
for your
can,
comment.
I can take
Sudhi,
that.
you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll take that to start. I mean, the focus of this effort won't be on necessarily measuring salinity no, I shouldn't say that. The focus isn't to try to get at salinization of the waters, but the instruments we have in the current setup should measure conduction and salinity. So it can be used as sort of a monitoring tool. I have been following this work through our colleague, Dr. Romo Naranjo at USGS, who's the lead. And I think it's a very important curiosity, and it's something we should be following up with the community, because with the science community, because the sort of groundwater, surface water interactions that are changing can also be leading to some of this nearshore condition change. And so I am very excited about this topic. I think Dr. Naranjo and others are as well. I would be very supportive of it. In my area of investment for the Tahoe Basin, because we have really good experts on this topic already, our lab has decided not to work in this area. So because it's a limited resource, a limited amount of time. So I'd really have to defer to those experts. One thing I do want to point out, though, is we're finally getting at mechanisms in the science community, which beyond the monitoring. And that's what Dr. Naranjo and others' work suggests, is these sort of complex interactions are going to be very important for making predictions on the nearshore water quality. So I do think investments in nearshore monitoring mixed with mechanisms and science are going to help guide us into the future. But right now, I can tell you there's very little investment going on in trying to understand mechanistic changes of the nearshore. It's kind of largely based on monitoring. This is a very important step forward we need to make for Tahoe and for other lakes globally, which are greening in the nearshore, like Crater Lake, Lake Baikal in Russia, Lake Atitlan. So we could really be leaders here again if we had additional science investment.
Thank you. I was thinking that your oxygen testing equipment in the nearshore environments might also be able to pick up some of that change, because that does change with the change from the iron into the phosphorus release. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other members in the room? Seeing none, Catherine, I'll go to you for Zoom participants.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are no hands raised online to comment.
Okay. We'll close public comment on that item. Any final thoughts from anyone? All right, we'll just say thank you again. Really appreciate you coming. Fascinating topic. Continued success, and we'll beat your drum and share your story.
Okay, thank you.
for your
Take care.
time.
Take care. All right, Jim, come on up. We're going to go to you next. I'll move us to agenda item 4B. This is a presentation of regional transportation plan implementation examples. Information on this item can be found on page 33. First, I think I'll go to Mr. Hester again to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you may recall, when you all voted to recommend approval of the regional transportation plan, Several of you, and specifically I'm remembering Eric Young, said he would like to know more about how from day to day or month to month or year to year, the regional transportation plan is going to get implemented. So who better than the man down the hall, the executive director of the Tahoe Transportation District, to go to than Jim Marino. So he is not going to tell you about every single project in the RTP and how it's going to get built and funded and all that, but he's going to give us some good examples. And so, Jim, thanks for being here.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. For the record, Jim Marino, I'm the executive director for Tahoe Transportation District. Last month, Mr. Hester approached me and asked me to present today before you on our status, TTD, the district status on implementing certain projects within the regional transportation program. If you give me a few minutes today, I'll walk you through exactly who we are, what we do, and a list of projects that we're currently working on that are active and scheduled to be constructed in the next couple of years. So if you don't mind, we'll roll forward. Next slide, please. So real quick, if you don't know who we are, an amendment to the bi-state compact created Tahoe Transportation District by Article 9. Essentially what we do is we facilitate and implement multimodal, safe, responsible transportation projects in the basin, primarily in the recreation corridors and across jurisdictional boundaries in both the state of California and multiple jurisdictions. So we really partner with a lot of agencies up here and a lot of working groups. TTD has 4 main divisions. We operate public transit on the south and east shores of Lake Tahoe, plus we have a capital program, which we'll go over today. We also manage a parking program. And of course, we have administration and oversight as well. Next slide, please. So we have a robust capital plan at the moment. We are currently funded, secured funding of nearly $87 million for capital transportation projects in and around the basin, mostly on the Nevada side of the lake at this point in time. There's, as you can see on the slide, there's a considerable amount of projects on the State Route 28 corridor in Nevada, as well as a project that we're doing on the Highway 50 corridor at State Line. And we also have a basin-wide technology project for implementing intelligent transportation technology, working with the 2 DOTs on that. In the past, TTD mainly served as a facilitator for these large-scale projects. We would bring the agencies together, we would find the funding sources, we would help put these projects on the ground, but typically we weren't the implementer. For example, the East Shore Trail, which we all know out of Incline Village, was implemented by NDOT, even though it was a lead project by TTD at the time, okay? The Fanny Bridge and SR 28 and 89 roundabouts at Tahoe City, same example, facilitated by TTD, however, implemented by Central Federal Lands in that case. Moving forward, however, TTD is going to get into the implementation game. We have discussed implementing many of these projects with local Department of Transportations and local agencies, and unfortunately, resources, staffing, and whatnot are leading to a direction change where TTD will actually implement these projects. To that effort, over the past 18 months, we've increased our capital program staffing. We've brought new people on. We're staffing up to begin implementing and constructing these projects. Next slide, please. So moving right into the Nevada State Route 28 corridor, I'll summarize the projects moving from north to south. And I apologize for trying to squeeze everything into one slide on these projects, but I felt it was a little bit better than having a 30-slide presentation for everybody. The North Parking Project is essentially the final phase of a project that we did in Incline Village several years ago called the Tunnel Creek or Bonanza Parking Lot. That's right at the southern fringe of Incline Village. It's 90 parking spaces, and it serves as trail access for the East Shore Trail and as a transit access for Sand Harbor State Park. So this project here is the final phase of that. That will add 38 new spaces moving north into Incline, just past Sweetwater Drive. It includes a multi-use path to connect the 2 parking lots and the East Shore Trail. It includes formalizing a public transit stop on the southbound lanes so that transit to Sand Harbor could be safely accessed off of SR 28 instead of blocking a lane. It also includes decommissioning off-highway parking at the Rocky Point location, which is just past the houses there before you hit the state park. So we'll decommission that parking. This project, the design is 100% complete. We are awaiting a permit from NDOT any day now. We will go out to bid on this project in December. And we are scheduled to construct this project next spring, start construction next spring. This is a 1-season project. We don't see it going any farther than that. I did include a little summary of our funding and our funding gaps on all of our projects. As I mentioned, we're fully funded for design, that's complete. And we're pretty much fully funded for construction. We see a $100,000 gap in construction funding. Now, that being said, it all depends on bids that we receive and where the construction dollars are at the time of bid. Feel pretty confident we can make up that $100,000 on this project. I really believe this project will be in construction next summer unless something really bad goes wrong. Our partners on this project, I've listed our partners at the bottom of each slide. As I mentioned earlier, we work with multiple agencies. I want to give a shout out to, Washoe County and also Tahoe Fund. And I give a shout out to Tahoe Fund because Tahoe Fund typically provides us local dollars to match our state and federal grants that we get for these projects. And without the local jurisdictions like Washoe County or groups like Tahoe Fund, it would be very hard for us to leverage the dollars we get from the state federal sources. So I want to give a shout out there. Next slide, please. Moving up and south of Sand Harbor State Park, we have the Sand Harbor to Thunderbird Cove Trail Project. This is a large project, large scale project. This is a continuation of the East Shore Trail that will go from Sand Harbor State Park up to essentially the Secret Beach Trailhead, which is about a 1/4 mile north of Thunderbird Lodge entrance. Okay, it's a multi-use trail. It is mostly contained in the NDOT right-of-way. There are very small segments that are on U.S. Forest Service property. This trail is roughly about 1.75 miles of trail, depending on our terminus point. It includes vista points along the highway and the trail. It's really just going to be the next phase of the East Shore Trail. It's a large project. This project will likely be delivered via CMAR delivery method, which is construction manager at risk. Generally, what that involves is we bring a contractor early on in the design process. That contractor works directly with our design team. They provide a guaranteed maximum price for the project, and then that contractor is the one that is constructing that project. Through that CMAR process, we may not see a lot of dollar savings, but what we will see is a major reduction in risk to the owner, right? We don't get change orders. Anything that goes awry on the project is the contractor's responsibility because they were brought in so early in the design phase. Our status on this project is we're currently in design. We're at 30%. We expect to be done design and into a CMAR process any month now. Remember, with the CMAR process, we bring a contractor in very early in design, 35%. That contractor works through all of the construction elements with the designer. So they're going to be brought on board anytime now. We're going to be putting out an RFP proposal for CMAR. We expect this project to start construction spring of 2027. However, as of today, we have an $8 million construction funding gap. We've secured well over $32 million in construction for this project. We have an $8 million gap. Where we are right now is we are doing value engineering analysis to see where we can pick up some cost savings through design and the CMAR process, okay? And we'll have those results probably in a month or so of what our value engineering exercise will provide to us. I will say that even though we're at an $8.2 million gap, we have over $10 million of grant applications in with the state of Nevada and FHWA. We should be hearing about those grants sometime around January. Current administration, it's always iffy whether or not we'll get any notification at all. However, we do feel that if those grants come in, we would be covered. We've also had some conversation with some local jurisdictions and agencies where they could also help us in that closing that gap. Next slide, please. So again, moving up the corridor or south from the terminus point of that previous project at Thunderbird Cove, we have the Thunderbird Cove to Secret Harbor project. Now in this zone, you may have noticed that the U.S. Forest Service has recently completed expanding the Chimney Beach parking lot. Okay, it's not open yet. And the reason it's not open is because we, TTD, are doing a crosswalk, a legitimized flashing beacon crosswalk, so that folks that are utilizing that parking lot have a safe mechanism to get across the highway to the actual Chimney Beach Trail. That is under construction right now. However, the long lead time on the equipment and everything, we expect it to be completed in the spring. So you'll see a suspension on that project, and then very early next spring, they'll come and set the signals and the crosswalk stuff, and it'll be ready to open the Chimney Beach parking lot. But as our project in this zone is expanding the Secret Harbor project, you may be familiar with the small Secret Harbor project or parking lot that sits on the lakeside of the highway. Our proposed project is to expand that to 120 spaces, formally eliminate that parking on the highway. Remember, these are safety projects. I think I should have mentioned that earlier, right? As much as we're talking about trails, parking lots, the goal of these projects is to get the vehicles off the shoulders of the highway, eliminate the folks that are walking down the highway or biking down the highway and putting themselves at risk, okay? So our project will expand that parking lot. This is mainly on U.S. Forest Service land, a little bit of it in NDOT right away. We are also installing formal transit improvements. So a formal transit turnout for public buses and a transit shelter with the intent of running public transit in the future up and down the SR 28 corridor to help with congestion and recreation access, okay? We are fully funded for this design of this project. We are at 60% design of this project. However, we have a huge 100% construction gap on this project. We estimate the construction of this project to be roughly $18 million, and we have not yet secured construction funding for this yet. So we do not have a construction start date set aside for this yet. I will again say that we've applied for grant funding through a multitude of sources to close that gap. And we will be hearing about that later this summer or I'm sorry, fall or winter. Next slide, please. At the terminus or the south end of Spooner Summit, across from Spooner State Park, we've just received approval to construct the Spooner Mobility Hub and Aquatic Invasive Species Inspection Station site. This is 250 parking spaces, transit facilities, restrooms, and a permanent aquatic and invasive species inspection station. This project is a co-implemented project. NDOT is funding and delivering all of the site and civil work. TTD is funding and delivering all of the vertical components of the project, the restrooms, the buildings, the facilities, the transit hub, and whatnot. EV charging, and some other things. This is a great sort of example of partnership right here. This project is out to bid right now. It has been permitted. It's out to bid right now. NDOT expects to open those bids next month and award a contract for construction to begin spring of 2026. This will be a 2-season project. We expect the site work, the off-roadway work to take 1 season, and then they'll come back and they'll do the intersection improvements and the roadway work the 2nd season. This project also has a crosswalk on the highway that would connect from this site to Spooner State Park. A lot of partners on this project, Nevada Division of State Lands, Nevada State Parks, U.S. Forest Service, Douglas County. I can go on and on. Great partnership on this project. A lot of fund sources, including U.S. Fish and Wildlife, FHWA, local funds, Tahoe Fund, for example. There's a lot of funding sources here. Next slide, please. Moving away from the SR 28 recreation corridor and moving more into the urban zone, we have a project at State Line, Nevada, next to Highway 50, which is essentially connects the Lamwata Nature Trail, which is that trail that goes from Cale Park to Nevada Beach, connects that trail to State Line, Nevada. It provides safe walking and cycling service through the State Line corridor from Lake Parkway between Kingsbury Grade and Lake Parkway, which if you have driven here today, you probably notice is a very unsafe area for folks to traverse. That project includes multi-use pathway on the lake side of the highway, the trail itself, which will go around Lake Parkway, behind Lake Parkway, and terminate at State Line Avenue. It also includes a sidewalk on the mountainside of the highway between Kingsbury Grade and Lake Parkway. Project includes stormwater improvements, and it also includes pedestrian lighting, so it's an accessible element during nighttime use. That project, we are currently fully funded for design. We are currently in local program partnership with NDOT right now. We're waiting to get our LPA agreement, which gives us the right to expend the funds. As soon as we get that, which we expect will be any time now, we will advertise for design consultant and we will begin design. We also have some funding set aside for construction on this already. And I think the gap is pretty minimal. I think we can close this gap pretty quickly with construction funding. With that being said, I would say that this project will likely go to construction in 27 if everything worked out right. Okay. Next slide, please. And finally, TTD has spearheaded a technology project this year in the basin, which we're pretty happy with, quite honestly. We received a grant from U.S. Department of Transportation SMART program, technology program, to beta test a camera system in the basin that provides data analytics for traffic and vulnerable roadway users. So this past summer, we have 9 camera locations on the California side of the lake, 3 on the Nevada side of the lake, and we have a mobile unit that we can put and displace wherever we deem we need it at any given time. Very successful program. So the way this technology works is we can tell through AI-based software program what the camera should detect at any particular location. So for example, right now we have our mobile trailer up on the summit of Mount Rose. And what we're doing up there is we're just simply detecting how many cars are coming into and leaving the basin every day over that highway. Nothing more than that. Okay. We're also beta testing satellite connection for all that data because there is no cell coverage there and there's no power there. So we're beta testing that right now. Just last month, we had that trailer unit out at Emerald Bay. We had it out there for 40 days at the Eagle Falls location, Highway 89 at Emerald Bay. In those 40 days, we discovered 21,000 pedestrian crossings from one side of the roadway to the other side, okay, in 40 days. 700 vehicle U-turns within the perimeter, within the view scope of the camera only. So you can imagine what's happening elsewhere. 8 near misses, 8 near pedestrian vehicle misses, and 13 wrong way drivers. Prior to that, one of our more permanent mounted cameras, in the 65 days that we've had it operating, we've discovered 271 wrong way drivers. That resulted in instantaneous contact to Caltrans, in this case, Caltrans, CHP, and within 40 days, new signage was installed, roadways were restriped, and the problem has since dropped off all to nothing. This project is an open source project, so when we are all said and done, all of this information is readily available to any agency that wants to see it. I'd like to thank TRPA staff because they are the ones that are housing the data for us and providing the open portal to the public. Where we are on this project is our first phase grant closes this month. So our beta testing grant is over. What we're trying to do right now is seek some local funding to help us continue to run the camera and the data analytics while we apply for stage 2 U.S. Department of Transportation funding, which would allow us a full build out of this system all across the basin. And what that would mean is we could have intelligent traffic detection at almost every intersection. We can do turning movements, we can do vulnerable roadway user data, we can use vehicle counts, we can do a lot of information, and then have the data at our fingertips to support more grants and support federal and state fundings to make a safer sort of transportation network up here. We're also testing, and I don't want to keep dragging on with this project, but we're also testing the feasibility of installing these into parking lots, public parking lots around the basin. It would give you real time, a user, a driver, for example, real-time information on parking available at any given site, okay? Which would help reduce congestion. So that's tying into TTD's parking management program. So we consider this project a great success. We really want to continue it. And, you know, we need the remaining dollars. We estimate roughly just under $10 million to get permanent structures set up in the right of way, cameras at strategic locations, work with the 2 DOTs, Nevada DOT and Caltrans, to actually install equipment and have licensed equipment on their structures like signal poles and whatnot. And so we're estimating about $9.5 million to get all that done. We have received some positive feedback from U.S. Department of Transportation, and I'll give you an example. We did a social media post about the wrong way drivers that we recently uncovered. That social media post garnered 21 million views. It went completely viral. US DOT picked up on it. So that was a really good boon for us as far as, you know, furthering this project in their eyes. That's about it for our projects that we're doing. So in summary, of the 6 major projects we're doing between SR 28 and Highway 50, 2 will be in construction next year, 2 will be in construction the year after, and 2 will be in construction in 28. So we are moving really well on these projects. We do have some construction funding gaps, but I do believe we can close those gaps. So next slide, please. I just want to say, you know, thanks for giving me the opportunity today. I know this really isn't science-based. It's more of like, you know, what's TTD doing and what are they getting on the ground? If you want to find out anything more about our projects, feel free to reach out to me or go to our website. We have project pages on everything, our social media and whatnot. We've been trying to get as much word out as possible. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions if you have them.
Thanks a lot, Jim.
Yep.
Appreciate you being here. Been hearing a lot of positive things about you taking over the helm at TTD. So congratulations and kudos there.
Thank you.
You can get what, 6 projects done in 3 years, more power to you. 2 a year.
We're gonna try.
That's huge. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's hard. That's a hard thing to pull off.
Yeah, I will say there is a, on 28, we have to be cognizant of how much we impact the roadway, right? Like, even though we're staged to go year after year after year, we have to be cognizant of just how much impact we're providing in that corridor with regard to traffic control and traffic stoppages and all that good stuff.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think it's probably, John Hester for the record, I think it's probably obvious to the APC members that these are great projects on a standalone basis, but there's also, just like Jim was talking about, leveraging with funding. A lot of this leverages other projects, and other projects can be more successful. For example, there's, as some of you know, the Destination Stewardship Group that's looking at or destination management. When Jim starts talking about putting this information in parking lots and letting people know real time what's going on, that's the kind of information and infrastructure you need if you want to do something like we've talked about, a parking app. So before you even come to the lake, you can see what's available, or if something is even available, and make your travel plans that way. That's more cutting edge destination stewardship, destination management. So there's a lot of good things that can get leveraged off of this, in addition to those 6 projects that Jim talked about. And I just wanted to point that out, especially for Mr. Young, who requested this presentation. So there's a lot going on in implementing transportation. Thank you.
Yeah, that technology project, the last one we heard about, is extremely powerful. I think those wrong way drivers were in the roundabout in Myers.
They were. I didn't want to single out a location, but
Yeah.
since you did it.
That's that's our zone down there. So
Yeah.
Careful if you're in that roundabout. And we're almost finished building the Pioneer Trail roundabout also. So be 2 roundabouts for folks to navigate back to back. Put your thinking caps on, everyone. Stay on the right side. Crystal, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Really great presentation. Thank you so much for being here. And super excited about all those projects. I did have a question, just with all those projects coming in on the East Shore, and it sounds like a lot of them, or most of them, are sort of safety related. I'm just curious about the priority setting for the projects, because I'm sure you've got a whole long list of projects. And I mean, I can see those, particularly the trail ones and the parking, kind of building on each other, right? It seems like, in building off of that East Shore Trail, but just if you can talk a little bit about how you prioritize the projects.
Absolutely. So, it's a little bit of a conundrum, right? Because certain grant fund sources become available and that you shoot for that maybe aren't specific to a priority that you have in mind, right? But you have a good chance of getting those funds. And I'll give you an example. So on the SR 28 corridor projects, after the East Shore Trail was built, we determined we'd need roughly about $100 million to finish the rest of the projects on that corridor, in that zone that I just showed you. And pulling $100 million out of the state or federal sources for multimodal projects is getting harder and harder every day, okay? So what we decided to do was we would focus on funding the projects that would get the cars off the streets first, right? Remove the parking from the shoulders, put them on an off-highway parking, and create transit. And save the trail aspect for the second component should we not find the available funding, okay? However, we would design everything at one shot, so we would be shovel ready for future trail projects. Then we applied for U.S. Department of Transportation RAISE funding. This was under the Biden administration. And we were successfully awarded $24 million for the Sand Harbor to Thunderbird Cove Trail project. And because that funding came in, it changed our priorities, right? Because now you have $24 million on a project, and it makes it much more likely to be viable and constructed. So then you start looking at changing your priorities based on monetary, revenue. And that's what we did. We focused now on Sand Harbor to Thunderbird Cove Trail, the extension of the East Shore Trail, because it was easier for us to leverage grants off of a $24 million grant than it was for us to put together a dozen $2 million grants. See where I'm going with that? So the priorities, even though there's a priority in place, which in our case, in the recreation corridor, is getting everyone off the highway into a safe space to walk or recreate, right? That's our priority. But even though that's our overall and arching priority in developing the projects and implementing the projects, it's dynamic in the case of that RAISE grant, right? Because if we couldn't leverage that RAISE grant, we would lose those funds. You only have a certain timeline, so you have to attack it. And so I would love to tell you we're going to do project A and project B in this order, but the reality it comes down to is what can we build with what funding as quick as possible. Now that Sand Harbor to Thunderbird Cove project is also in coordination with state parks and Nevada State Land's master planning process of the Sand Harbor State Park, in which they're proposing all kinds of improvements within the park itself. So now we're leveraging our project with their project to make an overall better experience. So no hard and fast answers for us. In this current administration, for us, the priority is safety, roadway safety. And how do we get our cyclists and our pedestrian users and our vulnerable road users off the roadways, particularly highways, and into a much safer environment?
Yeah, that makes good sense. I see Mr. Young's hand up, so we'll go to you, Eric, and then. Yep.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, John, for arranging this. Thank you for the presentation very much. It seems like something that all of us are probably interested in seeing annually. I don't know why we shouldn't do this a little bit more regular. This was very informative, very welcome. You just did a really excellent job of explaining the conundrum with funding and just how complex ongoing funding is. So thank you for that explanation. I think my challenge all along has been that these transportation improvements that we have are really central and foundational to our overall land use plan, to our overall vision of the lake, to our overall goals of environmental improvement for the lake. The transportation component of our, I called it a scheme, I'll call it that again. The transportation component of our scheme is absolutely critical. So the funding has to happen. Because if these projects don't happen, our plan loses a part of its very foundation that makes the whole thing work. So I think that as an important body here for the implementation of the overall plan, we need to keep our eyes and thoughts on how these capital improvements actually happen and don't just stay on a book. The complexity of the funding was just really explained well, but anything we can do to bring funding to the table is critical, because these, more than anything else, in my opinion, it's making the transportation plan come to reality has to happen for our overall vision. And I'll just end by saying thank you for the focus on the smart technology. It's very exciting. I hope someday that just becomes normal and it doesn't seem so exciting and far-reaching and forward-thinking. I saw a Dodge commercial on the television the other day. And they were trying to be very patriotic and, you know, promoting how great we are with our infrastructure. And daggone it, if the only thing they couldn't throw on the table was Hoover Dam, something that happened over 100 years ago. And that's, you know, that's the great American infrastructure. And we really, really need to start thinking about the new infrastructure and giving it real focus and making it come to reality. And the smart transportation infrastructure is one of those things that has to come off the table of being sci-fi and just, oh, how cool is that? And it has to just become expected and built into everything we do. So thanks so much for bringing it to the table. Good luck with everything you do. Good luck with the funding. And I hope you can make it back next year and talk to us again, or even just come from time to time and let us know what you're up to, because it's very welcome. So thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Steve DeShore for the record. So, Jim, your extensive background in capital project planning and implementation is really evident and much needed. And your willingness to sort of walk out on the edge of things, this technology and being able to show videos, you know, I think is the future of where grants will be made available. Because drawings and designs and everything, that doesn't necessarily. So even to be able to show this administration, people in this administration, FHWA, something that catches their attention, I think is huge. So kudos for that. And in the case of, you know, you stepped out on the Emerald Bay project to do some things there that no one else was able or willing to do. And I think that leads to my point here is that, you know, NDOT's been a great cooperating partner on the Nevada side. You know, it's a little bit more challenging to do projects in California. You know, the Fanny Bridge one was great. TTD got that, you know, that grant to get that project started, but then it was Central Federal Lands that did the bidding and picked the wrong contractor. So I think Caltrans needs some help in the Tahoe region. One of the things that I always think about is the Western Gateway project in Kings Beach. So that is the intersection, as we all know, of two state highways, and yet the state is basically abandoned that. You know, Placer County is the lead for that project, and they're trying everything to get grant money. You know, they've tried all these different things and they keep getting no. And yet Caltrans is doing a truck climbing lane project over at Brockway Summit down to the north boundary of the Western Gateway project. And it's like, I don't see any project down in there on the state highway. So, you know, if there's something that TTD can do to help, you know, a local government like Placer County in this case, or to help us convince the state that they need to find money for their own highway projects, you know, and they seem to find it in other places, not necessarily the rural communities, but, you know, Placer County's beating their head against the wall and Caltrans won't listen to them because that project is about $8 million away from construction. And yet it's a vital part of that whole section of Kings Beach and that Kings Beach to Tahoe Vista. And it's interesting because you could get some money if it was all in the census zone of Kings Beach because they are determined to be, you know, a disadvantaged community. But the minute you go over to the other side, to the Brockway Golf Course, that's a totally different story. So there's all these sort of artificial barriers that, you know, if there's ways that some of us can help identify those and conquer them, it would be great. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. And I will add that, you know, sometimes I feel like all of our agencies are competing against each other for the same funds, right? When it comes about prioritization, right? Is there a bigger picture about prioritization of transportation projects in the basin as a whole, right? Is there a mechanism to rank a project higher than another project other than just a local jurisdiction's want for a project, right? So if I'm out, you know, applying for grants for regional grant program funds and I'm competing against Placer County, for example, or El Dorado County, that's never a good thing. We need to sit down at the table and talk. In years past, the previous job I worked at, we would sit down with our partner agencies and say, what are you going for next year? You know, okay, we're not going for anything, so go for it, right? And we'd work it out on some of those local funds that were available. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Others? Don't see any hands. Yeah, I was gonna say, come more to California if you can. I know Emerald Bay, there's a lot of need, obviously, so looking forward to future partnerships there, I think.
Finish Nevada first.
Yeah, finish Nevada first. You're so close. Okay, let's go to public comment on this item. So again, here we are, APC meeting, October 8th. Click on the header. There you'll find our link to our webinar on Zoom. I'll call for members of the public in the room. I don't see any. So for members of the public online who wish to make a public comment on item 4B, now's your chance. Either click the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen or dial *9 on your phone, and you'll be unmuted by a TRPA staff member. Catherine, I'll go to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are no hands raised online to comment.
Thanks, Catherine. All right, we'll close public comment. Say thanks again to Jim.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate your time today. Good luck getting those done. Okay, I'll move us to agenda item 5. This is reports. First, I'll go to Mr. Hester for the executive director report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know from the minutes, we had no meeting items that went to the governing board recently. What you have upcoming, and I'm not going to tell you exactly which meetings they're at because they may change, but shoreline amendments, which I think are moving back a month. Washoe, what's that? Yeah, we all look forward to working on doing that again. Washoe County Tahoe area plan is coming forward in the near future. As you requested when Jacob Stock was here with the policy priorities from the Cultivating Communities Tahoe Living Housing Project, and he's going to bring those policy recommendations back. I think it was Commissioner Alling that asked for that. And if I could, I didn't make it to the working group meetings earlier this week, or the other meetings, and I didn't know if you wanted to say anything under this or under the APC member items about that, since you're chair of that committee. So I can stop for a second and have you do that.
Yeah, I can certainly jump in. We had a Tahoe Living Working Group meeting here in this room, I want to say last Monday. Jacob did, and the consultant team did present to us the sort of, the realm of concepts of what they're considering moving into the EIS. Mostly policy code language changes to facilitate affordable housing. This work stemmed from a number of workshops with the public and also engagement with our Tahoe Living working team. Lot of priorities on, things like ADUs, coverage, development rights, scaled development rights. Lot of good thought has gone into that. I think we've been trying to push as much as we can to reach and go far and even look at some sacred cows like coverage and things, at least to study them in the EIS phase, so that we can have a full picture for when it comes to us for recommendation to the board, and the board makes the final decision, which I think will be sometime late next year. So yeah, kudos to that team. There's been a lot of work done, and my fingers are crossed. I think, all of us that live here in the basin are experiencing the challenges of finding a place to live, and coworkers and hiring, and so this is critical need.
So I think tentatively, December, you'll get Jacob will be coming back and asking for your input on priorities to go to the governing board. That will go to the governing board, I believe, in January. And then we'll probably be back in March to have a hearing, an NOP hearing, before you all conduct that on the EIS. So lots of input coming on that. We'll also be bringing back a change to the project impact assessment, vehicle miles traveled, and DPS 4 and 5 policies in the regional plan. There's a number of reasons we want to update that to simplify the zones. We've had requests from a number of stakeholders to look at the credit period. It's 5 years now. More recently, we were at the South Lake Tahoe City Council and they asked for us to look at that. Forest health threshold standards update and water quality threshold standard updates are on the horizon. I'm assuming that the TUI SWIG, which you all also chair, will hear those first, but those are scheduled sometime toward the end of the year, beginning of next year. So lots of stuff on the plate and happy to answer any questions.
Questions for John? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, John. All right, Graham, we'll go to you for the general council status report.
Thank you. And I have no updates today. I mean, we're very busy office, remain very busy. We're working on several cases, but you know, those things take time and there's some things in the works that I'm just not ready to comment on yet, but I'll continue to update you when things develop. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Graham. All right, APC members, I'm coming to you next for any relevant updates you'd like to share. So Garth, start with you.
Yeah, I have two updates. First and foremost, Douglas County Board of County Commissioners, and then subsequently the governing board approved my seat here for 2 more years. So I'm here for a little while longer, at least, hopefully even more than that. But and secondly, I thought it's important to note that there's 2 grants that were applied for here in Douglas County, community wildfire defense grants, one for the top of Kingsbury area and one for the Glenbrook area. And it's looking very likely that those grants are going to be granted, approved. And that's for assistance with private property owners in removing trees from their property to decrease fire risk. And that kind of goes back to our previous discussions about all the work that's being done outside of the neighborhoods. This would be done directly inside our neighborhoods to decrease that chance of a catastrophic fire. So I'd let you guys know about that. Hopefully that'll all happen and be approved here shortly.
Good, thank you, Garth. Congratulations on your reappointment. Happy to hear that. Mr. McNamara? Yep, James?
I spoke on behalf of the Tahoe area plan at the Washoe County Commissioners last month, followed by a vote 3-1 to approve it, which, as you're probably all aware, was followed by legal action by Tahoe cleanair.org against county commissioners to reverse the vote or somehow cancel the vote. I can tell you that there are a lot of people in Incline that are still very upset about the manner in which the area plan was approved. I think lack of communication was probably the major thing. They think that somehow this is still being rammed down their throat by TRPA. And despite plenty of information provided to them, that seems to still resonate. Just reporting.
Yep, thank you for participating in that. Crystal?
Thank you. I have Crystal Jacobson for the record. I've got 2 updates. One is our Tahoe Basin area plan actually went to our planning commission on the 11th of September, and we got a recommendation for approval to our board. And so that's scheduled to go before our board on November 18th. So I'll report out after that, but kind of interesting to hear about your process. And then the second is that the county's holding a what we call a Discover and Discuss event. It's basically a community forum to come learn about all different kinds of things happening in Placer County in the basin. And that is scheduled on November 5th at the North Tahoe Event Center at 5 p.m. So I just wanted to give a shout out for that. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Crystal. Mr. Drew.
2 things. One is, because no, we don't have anyone from the school district here, but we're working with LTUSD. And so everybody knows that the prop that was approved this last year is in motion. We're working with them on 3 or 4 different projects to do upgrades at the middle school and some of the elementary schools. So it's those who have kids in town or have been in any of our school facilities know how desperately that investment is needed. So it is happening. And then the second item is it's the end of summer. And so many of you who have been on this board for a while know, I've heard me say this before, but we come to the conclusion another summer. I spent a lot of time on the lake doing a lot of non-motorized recreation. And I can say that the experience continues to be diminished. Especially, there are a couple of things, and I've said these before, and I'll say them again. We have done very little to make it easy to get non-motorized watercraft on the water. It's very challenging on the South Shore to find places where it's easy to get your kayak or your paddleboard or other equipment from your vehicle into the water, recreate, and get it back out. And when you're on the water, the boats don't follow the rules at all. We have more boats on the lake. They are closer to the shore. They're closer to you when you're paddling. It doesn't matter if it's 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. or noon. I think we really need to rethink if that's a priority and non-motorized recreation is a priority on the lake. We have a long way to go. I had at least half a dozen experiences this summer where boats came within 50 feet of me on a paddleboard going extremely fast or having a wake surfer behind them. And I don't have an issue with boats. I boat on the lake as well. It's enjoyable, but there's a lot of surface area. There's plenty of room for everyone. The fact that we have, there's no control on wake hours. Boats can be on the water at all times going at speeds. The noise, when it's 5:36 in in summer and you're going for a paddle and you can hear the stereo from a wake surf boat that's 3 miles away. I think there are some things we really need to think about in the basin with regards to non-motorized recreation on the lake.
Yep, thank you for those comments. Seen some of that myself. Steve?
Just quickly, Mr. Chairman, so building on what Jason was talking about, I think we have all observed the tremendous number of additional electric bikes out there on the trails, on the roads, everywhere. And a lot of similar issues of near misses and people really not understanding, what their role in safety is. And so, that's maybe not a lot that TRPA specifically can do about that. Like they could maybe do some things with on the lake, but I think we all need to focus on the fact that, trail building is great and we continue to need that, but it's getting increasingly the cars and electric bikes on the roadways are becoming increasingly fraught with peril, I would say. It's a whole new thing to, as a driver, it's a whole new thing to navigate. And a lot of them are really young people and they're going really fast. And yeah, they have helmets, but a helmet wouldn't help much depending on what could happen. So anyway, just an observation. And whatever we can do to promote, mobility safely, it's a huge issue. Anyway, thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, the middle school on the South Shore had a forum last week on e-bike safety. And yeah, it's a huge topic. Jennifer, nothing? Ms. Stoller, nothing? Mr. Hitchcock, how's the city faring these days?
Let's see, we presented our Midtown Area Plan to City Council last month. We got some positive feedback. Our next step is moving forward with environmental analysis and then adoption, and then bring it to go through the TRPA process. On my way over here, I noticed that Caltrans are putting in the new mid-block crossings, and that was a result of the US 50 safety audit that the city did with Caltrans. So hopefully it'll be easier to cross Lake Tahoe Boulevard. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, the signals are going across the highway and It's interesting that the Motel 6 crossings still went in, even though there's no hotel there anymore. Maybe there'll be a trailhead there if the Conservancy develops that parking lot down the road, so maybe it'll make sense at some point, but in the meantime.
With CTC and thinking about realignment of that bike path and maybe creating a parking lot there. So it's all still being discussed.
Good. All right, thanks, John. I'll go online. Oh, sorry, hold on. Graham's gonna jump in.
Yeah, I just want to comment in response to Mr. McNamara's comment. I think it's worthwhile just putting, talking about this for a minute. At the last month's governing board meeting, I covered this in my general counsel report, but I didn't do it here today. But just in response to that comment, I think APC members are aware. I mean, is a public education piece that we're always trying to get out there. There's misperception. TRPA adopted those phase 2 housing amendments in December 2023. And when that happens, it's really when we did that, and you guys started that process, and then it went to the governing board. Really the local jurisdictions are required to make sure the area plans conform to the TRPA standards. That's kind of the role that TRPA plays in the basin. We set the the minimum standards for all the local jurisdictions, and the area plan process is kind of cumbersome, as every county and local jurisdiction knows. You have a year under the existing code. You have a year to bring your plans into conformance. If that doesn't happen, TRPA will do it for you. That's kind of what happened in Douglas County. Every local jurisdiction sort of took a different route. And Washoe County, they went through this process to adopt the area plan. Then it has to come back to us again, and we have to then approve it once again, even though it's really just kind of a conformance check. And sometimes the locals will add additional things. They're taking the opportunity to update their plan. So I think John Hester alluded to that. That's something that will be coming back this fall. We don't know exactly the time. I think we have a good idea, but just wanted to remind you all of the process, and the public, anyone out there listening, that'll come back to us for just that conformance check and send it on to the governing board. And if anyone has any questions about this process, anyone can always contact me, and I'll provide more information. Thanks.
Thanks, Graham, for that context. All right, coming online, Mr. Young, I'll go to you first.
Nothing. Thank you for a good meeting.
Thank you, Eric. Mr. Drake?
Yeah, I'll give one quick update, and that is on the Eastern Placer Future effort, which is the exploration of incorporating a town in North Tahoe. Both Steve Tashara and I sit on the interim exec committee, and right now we are about 2/3 of the way through gathering petition signatures to finalize our LAFCO application. And we need 25% of voter signatures to move that forward. We're about 2/3 of the way there right now, making a big push this month. The next step will be undertaking the comprehensive fiscal analysis through LAFCO. And I guess that's the general update. If anybody is interested, you can hop on easternplacerfuture.org to get updates, learn more. There's FAQs, there's the preliminary financial or fiscal feasibility study and things like that. So things are moving along. And that's all.
Wow, thank you. All right. Thanks, Kevin. Mr. Drennan, I'll go to you. He's there, but muted, so I'll assume there's no update. Jim, if you want to jump on, interrupt me. Okay, that's everyone. Just a quick update from me. The El Dorado County Board did meet in Tahoe last week. We have them up here twice a year, so they still know that we're here. Sorry. I did present on a vacation home rental program update. which is always interesting. Got very favorable public comment in what we've done in Tahoe on that program, which basically has been to step up enforcement, actually enforce our rules with staff, including working code officers into the evening hours on the weekends. So we've done that. It is a huge challenge to pull that off, but we're doing it, and the public is thrilled. You know, the city's been pretty successful at that before Measure T. They had a strong enforcement program, so we've modeled some things after them. But there's more work to be done on the West Slope. Of course, our board said, well, good job in Tahoe. We don't like what you're doing on the West Slope. It's too much. So we're probably going to convene an advisory committee and do more work down there. Anyway, kudos to Tahoe, you know, and members of the public for coming and speaking up. That was huge. Supervisor Lane also took an opportunity to bring a few additional items, one of which is looking at a plastic bottle ban and a styrofoam ban in the El Dorado County portion of the basin, largely modeled on what the city's done. I think Placer County might be pursuing something similar, so it'd be pretty cool if we could get the whole California side of the basin on board with that. Brooke's taken that pretty seriously and got a 4-1 vote from our board to continue working with our environmental management department to potentially come forward with a new ordinance to implement that. So pretty cool. The one was Mr. Veerkamp. Yes, the dissenting vote. There was also a really impactful item for Giada Lancelotti, who was an e-biker that was tragically killed in our county, looking at renaming or, you know, placing a plaque on the bridge in Tahoe Paradise Park for her, and painting murals. So that was a really powerful item. Snowplow drivers, they did a tour of the city's rec center site, which is on the 56-acre parcel that the county largely owns, but we've been doing some land exchanges with the city. So anyway, just a pretty good, you know, Tahoe focused meeting for our board, which is always really exciting for me to see. So that's it. Okay, let me move us to public interest comments. This is item 6. These are our closing public interest comments. We'll go first to members in the room, which I don't see any, and then we'll go to members online. For members online, this is your opportunity to make a public comment to the Advisory Planning Commission. Please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen or dial *9 on your phone. You'll be called upon and unmuted by a TRPA staff member. Please note APCs prohibited from taking action on items not on our agenda. And Catherine, I'm going to you for members of the public online who wish to make a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's one hand raised online. The Zoom name is Elise's iPhone. If you could state your full name, Elise, and then unmute yourself to make your comment.
Hello, my name is Elise Fett, and I wanted to comment regarding several items. On the e-bikes, I feel like we need to, you're talking about the conundrum we're under. The e-bikes have a great purpose for people to commute, but they need a safe place. There seems to be talk of multi-use trails still, but multi-use trails don't work anymore with e-bikes. And so we really need commuter bike trails that are also emergency egress trails with separate walking trails. And then with respect to the plastic ban, I beg you, please add plastic bags to your ban, please, please. I live in Crystal Bay and I pick up plastic bags out of the water on my kayak all the time. With respect to the comments regarding the boats, we own both a wave boat and we have rowing shells and kayaks and paddle boards. We see both sides of it. Another conundrum. Yes, the wave boats can be out away from the shore. We need more policing of that. And I know TRPA has boats out there. We appreciate that. But our Coast Guard, I've been here for 30 years and our Coast Guard has never been there to protect us from speedboats. We have so many people on speedboats that just have 2 drivers and they don't have a third and they're right on the buoy line. And it's happened for 30 years and there's never the Coast Guard there to help us. So we really would appreciate the Coast Guard to step in here. I know you guys at TRPA have got going and the sheriff is there, but I don't know where our Coast Guard is. We have a large list of people that are here in Washoe County in Incline that are pro ADU as long as they're not used for short-term rental. We just need to make sure they're not used for short-term rental, and then we'll get rid of a lot of these people's concerns that are concerned here. We've been collecting names, so we want to let you know there are people pro ADU here in Incline, and we have a big list of them. We just need to know when to speak up. Let me know. Sudeep mentioned the Ramon Navarro research, and I'm so appreciative of that and what Ramon is doing. And let's also bring up and appreciative of the gentleman who brought up the issues with the salt and phosphorus. Please, let's also bring up, which Ramon is doing, and let's get it out there. No more nutrients added. Let's stop the nutrients added to all of our landscaping, whether it's on the lake or up the hill, like Ramon is showing. It's coming in through the groundwater eventually. Even if you're way up anywhere in the basin, we need to stop the nutrients. Thanks so much for your time, and appreciate all you guys do.
Thank you for those comments, Elise.
Mr. Chair, there are no other hands raised to comment.
All right, thank you, Catherine. I'll close public comment and I'll move us to our last item, which is to adjourn. Do I have a motion? Steve, we've got a
Second.
motion and a second. So we stand adjourned. It is 11:52. And thank you all. Have a great rest of the day.